Good evening. I'm Carol Fitzgerald from readinggroupguides.com, a website from the Book Report Network, and the host of the Book Reporter Talks to Video podcast series. Welcome to our Bookaccino Live book group event tonight, which is our 44th Bookaccino Live book group. And our guest is Laura Dave, and we are going to be talking about her latest novel, The First Time I Saw Him, which is an instant New York Times bestseller and one of my Book Reporter Bets On selections. Our reviewer, Rebecca Monroe, had this to say about it. Through every jaw-dropping, breathtaking moment of Hannah and Bailey's flight to safety, Dave populates their interactions with tender moments of love and reflection, elevating this madcap dash through the international crime into something much more emotionally resonant and relatable. I so agree. So let's go through what the format for tonight is going to be about, so you're all clear on what we're going to be doing. Let's start by noting that we're assuming everyone has read the book. This is the kind of book club. It's not just come for the wine. It's come because you read the book, because we are going to be talking spoilers. What I'm going to begin is I'm going to just introduce Laura, and then three readers are going to join us, and they're going to come on stage live and ask their questions about the book. And then we're going to take questions from the audience at the Q&A as the evening goes on. So drop your questions into the Q&A. Tom is not going to look for them in the chat. So if you can make sure that you do that. In the chat, though, if you can let us know who you are and where you're from, we always love to see that later on. I think that's all the housekeeping I have. So with that, let's welcome Laura.
Hi.
Hi, so good to see you.
So good to see you. I'm so grateful to get a chance to chat with you tonight.
I tell you, you have had the most crazy beginning of this year since I saw you in January when the book came out. You've been going like nonstop, right?
It's been a bit of a crazy nonstop moment, but I was just thinking that we met now more than a decade ago,
A decade ago.
and no book tour feels complete unless I get a chance to talk to you. And I'm just looking at everyone in the chat coming from all over tonight, and that is such a tribute to you and what you do for the book community. So
Oh,
I just wanted to
thank you.
start by saying not only thank you for having me tonight, but thank you for everything that you do. We are all so grateful to you.
Thank you so much. We started on America Online, and I think it got us across the country, and we're also not very elitist. So
Yeah.
we're not just each coast. We're like
Yes.
everybody. And didn't you
Yes.
just move? Didn't you just move and put all those books up on the shelf?
I did. This is our house, actually. We moved back into our house. We had been out of our house for a while. So I finally have, which I can show, I have a real true library, which I've never.
Oh, wow.
So this is where I work every day now. This is my first real book event that I'm doing from my new office. So I'm really happy to be in it.
This is totally cool. I saw you unpacking, and I was like, wait a second, what is she doing? So that's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's a lot.
My,
It's a
my
lot.
books were in storage during this time, and I said hello to each of them when they came back. I love them so
Like,
much.
where did you go? Where were you, my little friends? Where were you,
Exactly.
friends? So Debbie Moore, who's been with us for every one of our events that we've done for Bookaccino Live Book Group, is going to join us tonight. She's right now in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina,
Amazing.
and she's got a couple of questions for you. So welcome,
Wonderful.
Debbie.
Hi, thanks, Carol. It's great to be here, and it's nice to meet you, Laura.
It's nice
Uh,
to meet you.
I've really enjoyed both of your books. I thought they were so much fun and just so intriguing. Um, in when did you know you were going to write the sequel to The Last Time He Told Me?
So basically, it took me about 10 years to write the first book. So I was writing it on and off since about 2011, shortly before I got married. I received for a wedding present a wood turn bowl. And I started thinking about everything that goes into wood turning because I didn't know anything about it before, the patience, the perseverance, the physical strength. And I thought, there's my hero. There's a woman who is going to find herself at the center of a situation that all of us, as normal people in the world, what would we do in that situation? She is us, and everything gets amped up. And when I wrote those first drafts, I thought that the story ended in a specific place because I thought I was telling the love story between Hannah and Owen, a
Mhm.
woman who believed in her husband when the rest of the world was telling her she should not. And then I took a break. it wasn't working. The book wasn't working. I'm getting to your answer. It's a long-winded way to get to your
Okay.
It's
answer.
okay. Such a good
And
story.
I had my son in 2016, and I threw out 70,000 of those 90,000 words. And because I realized it was the primal story, really, of someone becoming a mother. And that the love story that I thought I was telling in that first book was not the love story that I was telling, but rather it was a love story between a mom and the woman that was going to, young woman that was going to become her daughter. So all of that is to say that that very first last chapter I put in a drawer because I was still very attached to it. It was the reunification of Owen and Hannah, and I was very, very attached to it. And after the book came out, the reception was such that so many readers asked me what happens next, what happens next. And I was surprised I had an answer whole cloth. And that very first chapter became the last chapter of the second book. So I think I was writing two books all along. I just hadn't planned it that way. And that second book was that reunification love story of Hannah and Owen.
Wow, what a great story, how that came about.
I want to be in
Um,
the drawer. I want to go in the
yeah.
drawer. I mean, seriously, I'm surprised that Mary Sue, your editor, doesn't go in the drawer once in a while. Like, what's in here? Where's in the drawer? You know?
So she knows I have something called the garbage file on my computer, and I have the garbage drawer. So both of those are things that I cannot let go. And they often make their way into other, it's because I know that they haven't lived their life, even if
Right.
I'm letting go of them, that they're going to live somewhere else.
There's more moments for those words.
Yes.
So the second book, it read much more like a family saga, I
Yeah.
thought, than a thriller. Although there's plenty of thrilling parts of this.
Yeah.
What interests you about writing about family dynamics?
I think that I've always understood the world via relationship. I've
Okay.
always thought about it that way. Even in terms of storytelling, I was a reader before I was a writer. And from the time I was really quite young, I thought of the relationship between a reader and a writer as quite an intimate one and a wonderful one. I always say everyone's reading a different version of my book because they're bringing themselves to it. Just like every time I pick up a book, I'm reading a different version. I'm bringing myself to that book that I'm reading or writing. And so, all of which is to say that I've always been really interested in family, and thinking about relationships in that way. And my first five books were really entirely focused on that. I think what separates these books is that I sort of turn the volume up on the stakes of what those relationships had to do in order to maintain. But, I always say that I try to write thrillers or suspense novels rooted in love, rooted in hope, that no one is going to be a villain, no one is going to be a bad guy, that what I'm most interested in is the way that we lose ourselves a little bit at a time and how do we find ourselves again. And also what makes us similar from quote unquote the people that we say are bad as opposed to what makes us different. And if you look at the thread in these two books, what makes everyone similar, even the villains, is that there's nothing that any of these people wouldn't do for their families. So I wanted to go back to the primal injuries,
Mhm.
rectify them, and find the common ground.
Mhm. Yeah, I felt that in your book, as I felt like, you sort of asked the question, how far would you go
Mm.
to keep your family alive?
No, that is so astute. And in fact, I start every book with a question. And the first question of the question of the first book was, can you ever know the people you love the most? And the question of the second book was, what are you willing to do to be forgiven? And if you
Mhm.
merge those two, that is really the question here. What are you willing to do for your family? Because everything here falls on the axis of forgiveness and love and family.
Do you actually have that on the wall or is it just in your head? Do you
I
actually?
ha I have it on a wall. I have it. The question I always put above my desk. And for the second book, for the first time I saw him, I had four words actually on index cards on my desk as well and taped up. So like I have when I write, I have it's like an ergonomic, I don't have it in here right now, but it's like an ergonomic little tray that like lifts up so
Mhm.
that they're in good shape. So I sort of tape it to underneath on the tray underneath the computer. And the words for this book were redemption, reunification, salvation, and forgiveness. And
Mm.
even though I don't have an outline, I know I'm writing toward those pillars. I'm writing thematically toward everyone finding that for themselves, even if it's going to look different for everybody.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Is it interesting to go back and read the book now, seeing those pillars throughout the book? I mean,
Yeah.
it's making me want to reread. It's like,
Yeah.
wait a
I know.
second, I need to reread. And
Yeah.
we're going to do one more thing, Debbie, while you're on. Laura, I want you to explain that you listen to the same song. And I remember you did an event really early, maybe it was with Poison Pen. And
Yeah.
I was on remotely and I said, so what was the song that you listened to over and
Yes.
over? Because I think that anybody who doesn't know this about Laura, this is amazing.
So every book, I pick a different song that I listen to on repeat. I think because I don't outline, because everything, I'm really trying to follow the rhythm of the storytelling. So the first draft is me finding my way to something like the thematics and the ending and the characters. And then the second draft, I go in a deeper way with plot and figure out the different like touchstones in that way. And then draft 18, somewhere around draft 18 is when I share with my editor, much to her chagrin that it takes that long. So what keeps me in the rhythm of the storytelling I have found is if I listen to the same song on repeat. And I do it so religiously that when I stop writing, I'll literally stop the song and I pick up that song at that exact place the next day. So
Wow.
Oh,
for the last thing he told me for the first book, the song was If I Should Fall Behind by Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. It was a specific version of that song that they sang at Madison Square Garden, which everyone in the band sings a verse, and which I imagine to be, if anyone remembers from the first book, they have their wedding reception at Francis at a restaurant. It's just a small dinner party. And I imagine that after everyone left, they dance to that song. They put it on their iPhone. So it's like their wedding dance. So I knew that was the movement of that. And when I was working on the sequel, I spent a lot of time reading sequels because I wanted to think about it. And I spent a particular amount of time with The Odyssey, which in my opinion is the best sequel ever written. And there's a song on Folklore called Cardigan by Taylor Swift. And in the last verse, it felt to me almost like a siren call in the same way Penelope has a siren call to Odysseus and Hannah has a siren call to Owen, that they knew the person was going to come back to them. It was almost a calling home. And so that song, really stayed with me for not only the writing of the book, but the research of the book as well.
So how many times did you think you listened
that's
to
so
it?
fascinating.
Yes.
How many times did you listen to it?
I have to look up the Taylor Swift answer. I know with Bruce Springsteen it was 33,000 times. So and I'll still listen to both those songs. I love them. And I love the way they speak to each other too. I just think both of those songs are so wonderful.
That was
Well,
great. I just love that. I love that.
thank
Debbie,
you so much. I can't wait till the next book. You have to write a
Oh,
third one now. I have to
yes.
find out what happens to them.
Debbie, thanks
Thank
as
you.
always for joining us. Okay, this is person who's going to join us. This is really fun. This is Kim Blank from Holbrook, New York, which is out on Long Island. And we met for the first time at your event at the Strand in January while we were waiting for you to come on stage. And the two of us just started chatting.
I love so much. I can't tell you how much I love that.
And she was talking about, Kim was talking about her book group she was trying to pull together and what would they be talking about. And we just had such a good time. And I was like, well, can Kim come to every event? That would be nice. She could meet my friends. This would be great. So,
I
Kim,
love
great to have you here with us.
Yes, thank you for having me, and so nice to see you again, Laura. Absolutely love the books, and of course, just finished season 2 of the series on Apple TV. And I really wanted to dig in a little bit to some of your character development. And specifically, what I found interesting in the season 2 was the Quinn and Teddy characters are more developed in the season. And it was really interesting to see that come together. And really, what I wanted to understand were what were some of the themes and elements that you wanted to bring to the surface with both of them? I think you've mentioned a little bit about that family dynamics and what have you. We got that from Debbie, but I would love to hear some of your thoughts on it because it's really always interesting when the book lines up in certain ways, but then
Yeah.
kind of throws us a loop
Yeah.
when it's brought to life on television.
So I'll start by saying that my husband and I created the show together, and the first season of the show we wrote those episodes with a small group of writers, but we were involved in like every decision. It was our show, it was my baby. We were there constantly. When with the second season, I was deep in editing on the book. So I wasn't involved in the same way. So what happened was it was a different process. At the very beginning, I gave 100 pages to the new showrunner and the new director, who wonderful Aaron Zellman and Daisy, and I walked them through like these are the big movements of. I had a whole draft, but I only shared the first 100 pages and then walked them through the rest of it because I'm very protective until I'm at draft 18. So they knew about Teddy, they knew about Quinn, they knew about the motion of the book. So I knew all of that, but the showrunner made a decision which I understood but was different. He knew the pillars of what the book was going to cover, and we knew that we wanted the show to cover that in different ways. Was to get to the same thing, but he was going to put his stamp on getting there in a different way. So I think that's something that, when you have 8 episodes of television as opposed to a novel, you have in some ways more time to spend with these other characters to understand their points of view. And it was very important to him and to the group of writers who worked on season 2 to sort of get into the headspace of who was this family who was so detrimental. In
Mhm.
my book, I was more interested in what was the primal injury that caused all of this to begin with. And that was Kate being on the side of the road. And so
Yeah.
to me, that involved Frank and Nicholas more urgently than his kids. But in the show, there was room to look at all of it, and they made some different kinds of decisions. I think ultimately the show also is really looking at forgiveness, looking at the nuances of how you reunite, but it certainly is different, and they're more villains sort of in the show than in the book.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, it's very interesting to hear a little bit more about the process. And I'm as well am looking very much forward to your next book. I've read everything and I'm excited to see what's next with you. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Or this is the pressure that's coming. Actually, Mary Sue told us to say these things. No one's joking. Apply pressure throughout the evening, Carol. See what you
I
can.
love it. You guys, I am knee deep into my new book, so I love hearing that. It makes me want to write quicker. So thank you. I'll take it. I'll take the pressure.
What draft are we on? 15, maybe?
One,
Okay.
one, but it's okay. It goes fast. After one, they go faster.
After one, it goes faster. Okay, that makes
Yeah.
me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Okay. Now joining us is Rena Zayman, who's joining us from LA. And I think you two met each other at the LA Times Book Festival.
Yes, we did, and she's a wonderful writer as well. So it's lovely to see you again and get to speak with you tonight.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Carol. I'm so excited to be here. Like Carol mentioned, I got to meet you, and I was so moved by your very soulful and deliberate approach to writing. Just you've spoken on here so far, and I think all of us have been just really wowed by the really intentional approach you take. And sorry, that's my Chihuahua sneezing, if you can hear.
Never apologize for a delicious dog.
You haven't met her yet. She's
Oh,
always here. And your books hold such a special place in my journey because I think I told you I have my first suspense novel coming out, and I read the last thing he told me and watched the first season to stay tonally in there. And so as someone who is, I have this will be my second book. I'm a baby author. As as an author who is early on in her career, this is a question from other writers like myself. What are some essential elements that have contributed to your very long-standing and impressive career? You've spoken on the very intentional approach you have to your writing discipline. Of course, your relationship with an agent and the editor is really fundamental. But can you speak on some other essential principles that you've used to create this very impressive canon of 8 books and more to come?
For me, I think it starts with a real joy that I still take from writing. And I know that sounds, I don't know, I shouldn't say I know how that sounds, but I mean that sincerely. I feel so grateful every day. There's a great E.B. White quote about that his favorite thing is looking at the blank page. And I still very much feel that way. And so the first thing I always say to anyone who's starting out writing, which of course you are not on book 2, but is try to find a way to make your writing experience something that you look forward to, that is joyful. So like when I sit down to write every day, that's when I get my first sip of my coffee. So like I attach it to also how do I create an actual space where, because some days are harder than others, the creativity has the best chance. And also, what I also do is, and some people do this with word count, some people do this with how many hours they log. I do it that it's the first thing I do every day. So I don't get on the internet. I don't go on Instagram. Obviously, that's on the internet, so no social media. I don't answer emails. All of that can wait if you're lucky enough to organize your life that way. If you have a job, that might have to look different. It might have to be the weekends, or when I did have a lot of other jobs. When I was writing my first book, I had 13 jobs, quite literally. I still kept the mornings free to write. So whatever it is, figure out what your writing habit is going to be and try to stick to it and find things that help you stick to it. Also, equally practically, I have 2 books that I highly recommend: On Writing by Stephen King, which is something I come back to again and again, and Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott, which is, I think of both of those books as providing techniques that allow for the freedom for creativity. And I highly recommend them. And the other thing I will say is publishing and writing are 2 different things, and they often get conflated. And I got really great advice when I was in college. I knew I wanted to write since I was 5 years old. And I remember I asked one of my professors, I went in, I said, I wrote this story and how am I going to get it published? And I want to be a writer. And he said, you are going to write a lot of things and worry about the publishing part later. And I took that to heart. And I thought that might mean that I have other jobs that pay the rent, that I do other things. I am going to get my writing to a place where whatever I turn in is the best it can possibly be. And I'm not going to think about publishing until I am sure that that piece of writing is its best version. And that also, I think, is incredibly important because it's 2 different things you have to do. And the publishing part requires all of your attention. So I think you only start on that when you are so thrilled with what you've written. Like, in other words, more practically, I wouldn't turn in a book if you think it's not ready, thinking your editor is going to get it all the way there. Turn it into your editor when you think you've gotten it all the way there, when there's no low-hanging fruit left, and what you 2 are going to do together is something you couldn't have even imagined. That's the raising of it, another letter grade.
Incredible. Thank you.
The other thing I'd add to that too is when you get into your publishing team, make sure you like the people that you are working with and you trust their advice back to you and you're willing to make changes if they say to make changes, or you're going to need to travel or you're going to need to do this, that you can trust their wisdom to be sharing with you. Because I think that a lot of people are very interested in getting published, but being published is a whole other ball of wax. And Laura, I know you'd agree with me that you want the best people behind you, helping you make decisions about whether it's the cover, where you're going to go, how you're going to travel, and when you're not going to either. because you need to go do something else, even if you want to keep going around the world.
Exactly. I think that is so smart. And there's so many voices that start coming at you. And so what you want is that the people that you trust the most, your agent, your editor, your first readers, whoever they are, that it's people who you know their storytelling lines up with yours so that they're going to help get your book, your story to where you want it to be. And when I was in graduate school, the same person said two different things to me, which right along the lines of what Carol just said. One is, you can't write a book with 13 backseat writers. So don't listen to everyone in the class who's giving you feedback. Listen to one or two people who are giving you feedback who you really align with, and take the music of everyone else's notes, but don't let their voices live in you in that way. And the other thing that he said to me, this friend, was, are you writing for readers or are you writing for other writers? And I think that's a really important distinction, because I think if you're writing for other writers, it's harder to kill your darlings, meaning like you might write a line that you think is so poetic and beautiful that you have to keep it, that you don't send it to the garbage pile. But if you're writing for readers, it's just your loyalty is to the story. And so then it's easier to put things aside.
Yeah. And as you meet people along the way, whether it's the editor, the agent, you may be happy because you found somebody and
Yeah.
you found somebody, but make sure they're on the same wavelength with you, with where you want to take your book. Because sometimes you're just grateful. Oh, somebody wants to be my agent. But
Yes.
is it really going to be the right match? Look at who else they're agenting. Look who else they're publishing. Read the other people they're publishing. And if you can, talk to some of those people that they're publishing so you have an idea. And it's more than I would usually share here, but I think that's from me watching this business for almost 30 years, but I'm still 27. It's really something that I see a lot of times. Sometimes it's not the best match, and that's really could take a book from being here to going to here.
Yeah.
What I love is you always speak about your love for the word, and that is what you're stressing now. And especially right now in the industry, there's so much noise around publicity and getting your book into book talk hands and influencers, and which, like you said, publishing is different from writing. So I really appreciate that you're telling us always go back to the love of the word.
Yeah.
Go to what is true for the story instead of true for the trend.
Yeah. I think
Instead of write for the story and not the trend.
when I was trying to put the last thing he told me out, I sent it to my editor. I was contracted to write a very different kind of book. This was a real shift for me. And not only was it a real shift, but it's not a traditional, Debbie said this, it's not a traditional thriller. It's not, you don't wake up and find out that the husband is evil. You don't wake up and there's not revenge. There's not that darkness. And so not only was I changing genres, but I was bending it a bit. And it could have gone the other way in terms of the reception. But I knew that this was the story I wanted to tell. And because I knew that, I was able to sort of stay true to it. Versus if you're chasing something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like something that's wildly popular, like The Housemaid. Let's just say, I have a copy of it sitting over there, which I've never read. I have to read it. But The Housemaid, like if you think I'm going to write something like that, you're because it's a trend or whatever. Not that I'm not commenting on the book. I'm commenting on a trend of people being like, well, that's successful. I want to do that. You're going to end up, you just don't know how that's going to go either. So the best thing you can do is write what's really true to you. And someone said to me once, I clearly listen to advice, but someone said to me once, write the story you want to read. And if you're writing the story you want to read, you're going to find someone else who really wants to read it. Not write the story you think you should write.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
And Rima, when everybody's talking about book talk right now, I'm going to say something to you after doing this for 30 years.
Yeah.
First, there was AOL, and
Yeah.
then there was MySpace, and then there was Facebook, and then there was this. Okay. We're at the thing. The thing won't be there forever. And right now, there's a lot of reliance in publishing on the thing for you to find books. But most people over the age of 40 are not on TikTok. Most are not over the age. And to find them is a totally different thing. So I'm just saying, you hear we
Thank
have
you.
to do this. What's the have to? So
Right. Yeah, for a long time, it was like, we got to get the book to Oprah, or whatever.
Yeah.
Everyone would say that as though that's the only way to, it can become, it can, publishing is complicated. Obviously, let me tell you that, but it is like, uh, Antonia Nelson, who was my first writing teacher, took a class with her when I was 21. I quit my job and flew to New Mexico to spend a week with her because I loved her writing so much, which is will either suggest that I'm crazy or devoted or both. But in any event, what she said that week was publishing is your box of books arrives and someone yells at you, "What's for dinner?" Like it goes like, she's like, it has to come down to the writing. And I think I've really held that so close for every day. I'm like, what if someone doesn't let me write anymore? Like, I just want to keep writing. So,
Well, I love that because it's not what if someone hates my book, it's what if I don't get to do the thing that I love.
yeah.
And it's a complete mindset shift, which allows you to always go back to the source, which is your own voice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you, Rima, for joining us. And now Reva Snell from Altus, Oklahoma has got a question. I enjoyed both of the books in this series. Could we possibly hope for a sequel? And if so, who would be the main character of the book? So are we going for book 3?
No.
No.
This is the end. This is the end. I briefly imagined a third book that picks up on Bailey's wedding day. And I had an idea of exactly what that would look like, but it would look like reunification. And that something else would happen, and then they would have to figure out a way to reunite again. But I actually feel like this is the reunification on a boat going somewhere that we don't get to see them.
We don't get to see where they're going. We don't get to see where they're going. Okay. That's fair. But if you pick up with the other, and no one is going to be upset. No one.
Yes.
No one. Vidya from Pleasanton, California asks,
really quickly, thank you for the question because that means a lot to me that you want to know. But I think that this is the right ending. Yeah.
It could be a short. You could just do a short of Bailey, and we don't have to go really into it. But we're at Bailey's wedding, and okay, there's your other idea. If you just want to just go to Bailey, like one more time. Vidya from Pleasanton, California asks, I've only read the first time I saw him, and I want to read the last thing he told me. Where did Hannah and Owen/Ethan meet?
They met in her showroom in New York City, which is chapter 2 of the last thing he told me. So you can see the whole meeting. They meet in her showroom. He's a client.
So there's where that story begins. She's also curious to know if this is your writing style or is it used when a character is thinking about their past? And it's because she said there are a couple of sentences that are repeated. And I think this is really interesting to find. She says, in chapter 1, the first time it happens is after he'd gone to see Hannah at the design center in LA after 5 years. If you can forgive me, what can he say about that now? How can he say that about any of this? And then again in chapter 13, you can't plan for what you plan for. I put my hand on her shoulder. I put my hand on her shoulder and I try to calm her to let her know I've got this. I try to believe that myself. So she caught you repeated the words.
Yeah. So I think because I write in a way that is almost reverie, like the main character's thoughts, I do that sometimes. It's intentional. I do it more than ends up in the book, and I often pull back so that it's only a few times in the book as opposed to how many times it naturally happens while I'm writing.
So she also wants to share that she enjoyed reading the first time I saw him and that you have become a fan of your writing and she's watched the series, The Last Thing You Told Me, and she's waiting to get her Kindle copy of that.
Oh,
just so you know, she's going to go full circle on your writing. So there you go.
I appreciate it.
She also says, I've really enjoyed reading how the relationship between Hannah and Bailey evolved to mutual respect and understanding. Hannah standing up to the family that wants to hurt her husband and refusing witness protection. Owen's love for his daughter, and he is ready to do anything to protect her. And she thought it was standing up was like a really big part of what you were writing about.
It absolutely was. I think that, how do we show up for the people we love? That is really a central theme here. And what I loved exploring is that sometimes we don't even know how someone else is going to become the key in our lock. And
Mhm.
here you have a motherless woman, a woman who was never mothered, learning how to mother someone who lost their wonderful mother far too early.
Mhm.
And they really needed each other, and they proved it particularly in how Hannah shows up for Bailey.
Yeah, and Hannah's showing up for Bailey that like I barely know this child. She doesn't even like me, but he said protect her, and that's
Yeah.
it. That's my game from there.
And I wanted her to be at an age where Hannah didn't have to make that choice. Meaning if Bailey were 3 or 4, you do what you need to do for a cherub little child. You take care of them.
Right.
But Bailey was almost fully grown. And yet Hannah still gave up everything to make sure that she found her way to young adulthood, through young adulthood and into adulthood, seamlessly. And I felt like that was a different kind of sacrifice that I was interested in exploring.
Yes, and also she's not being very nice to her either. She's
Yes.
slamming doors, she's throwing things like, yeah, she's not a very happy child about this whole thing. So we're going to go to audience questions a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more about you for writing for film and TV
Yes,
because I
sure.
think it's something that interests readers so much about how does it come together. And what I'm going to go back and start with is you weren't going to become a screenwriter. Like that wasn't, you're going to write books. Your husband
Yes.
is Josh Singer, and he has written movies. He has won an Oscar. I get to watch her at the Academy Awards. I yelled at like the screen, I want to see what Laura is wearing because I know where she's going to be sitting. So those are the things that concern me. So
Yeah.
let's talk about like his screenwriting and then how you got involved in this because this wasn't the way your career was going.
So there was a few different things that happened. From the time I sold my first book, London's the Best City in America. Reese Witherspoon coincidentally optioned that book. And my second book is a book called The Divorce Party, and Jennifer Aniston optioned that book. And early on, I had no intention of writing screenplays. But by the time my fourth book came out, 800 Grapes,
Mhm.
and Fox optioned that book, 20th Century Fox, Fox 2000. I thought I wanted to give it a shot and be involved in it in some way, especially because I learned more that I had seen it, not just with my husband, but I always say my work husband is Jonathan Tropper, who's a great
Yeah.
novelist in his own right, and now almost exclusively writes screenplays. And so I thought he made that move, and I knew people who had made it, and I wanted to try to bring something to fruition myself. And when the last thing he told me, and so 800 Grapes I wrote a draft of, Hello Sunshine I wrote a draft of. Those are both still in development now. The Divorce Party is supposed to be a movie on Netflix. And so is The Night We Lost Him. The Night We Lost Him, I wrote that, and we're turning in a draft to Netflix next week for that to be a movie. When the last thing he told me was coming to be, my husband and I thought this was the perfect thing to work on together. And we sat down and we figured out what that show was going to be. And it was an absolute joyful experience writing it with him. So
Wow.
much so that we wrote The Night We Lost Him together as well. So, which is a long way of saying that I think one of the best things as a writer is to keep challenging yourself and moving in different directions. And TV and film are such different mediums, which require such different things. What I'm working on now, actually, is in addition to the book I'm working on, I'm writing a play. And so I just like exploring different mediums and seeing what that brings out and the different responsibilities that the different mediums have.
So when you were sitting down and writing, were you writing literally the dialogue together, literally what it was going to be? Because it's so different. You put so much less on the page in a lot of
Yes.
ways. Because somebody's been able to do an expression. You don't have to sit there and describe the expression. You're
Yes.
going to let the actress or actor do that.
The way that we work when we're working together is I write the first draft, then he comes in and writes a second draft, like over my first draft, and then together we do the third draft.
Right.
So we each do a version, and then we come together and do the third draft together.
And you sit at the table together and actually are piecing the whole thing together and saying, how's it going to work?
Yes.
Okay, so then you have locations in mind. Like you knew there was to
Yes.
be this houseboat. So
Yes.
now this thing that was in your head, you have to go find the houseboat. Unless you saw the houseboat while you were doing research and knew what to do.
Yes.
So you're going to go find this and you're going to shoot on this houseboat. You
Yes.
find the location, or the location staff finds it and brings you, or what ends up happening with that part?
So I do a ton of research when I'm working on my books. So I already had Hannah's houseboat. I already had gone to the docks, Issaquah docks. When we started to do location scouting for the show, you go with the director and you all fly up there. And as you said, my husband's last name is Singer. And in a funny coincidence, the houseboat I had picked out for Hannah, you knock on the door and you see if they're interested in letting you shoot there. The family that lived there, their last name was Singer, which was just so bizarre. Such a funny small world. So it came down to picking that houseboat or one other houseboat. And we ultimately picked the other houseboat because the director and the cinematographer thought it would be easier to shoot the other houseboat. If it was just my decision, we would have shot the boat I imagined to begin with, the floating home I imagined to begin with. But that's one of the learning experiences. It's a team effort, the TV. And so you let everyone have a vote and you figure it out together. But I always know going in what I imagine we should be shooting. And sometimes we stick to it and sometimes we pick something else.
So if it's a difficult place to shoot, let's say the houseboat, but there are going to be a
Yes.
lot of scenes on the houseboat. Do you shoot them all in one day? Like, because there's so many times where I mean, I confess, besides reading a lot, I watch a lot.
Yes.
I'm watching the Jonathan Tropper Friends and Neighbors second season.
Are
Yeah.
you?
Oh my gosh. Well, Jonathan's really funny because there was one night I asked him a question for the audience and I used the wrong inflection. And he goes, "Oh, is someone European in the audience?"
Oh, that's
I
hilarious.
stood up and I waved. He goes, "Oh, and I am in so much trouble right
Yeah,
now."
yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. But anyway, when you watch that and you say, like, I know that with when they were doing the Bosch series, that house on top of the hill, you shot that every shot for that was done in 2 days
Yeah.
because you had to get everybody up there. Do you run into that same situation that you're shooting out of order?
So with the houseboat in season one, we shot the exteriors at the actual houseboat, but we built a replica of the houseboat on the Fox lot. And so we shot most of the scenes at the replica of the houseboat, not actually on location,
Yeah.
because we had weeks and weeks of shooting at that houseboat.
Right. I was like, how are you going to do that? Like, the
Yeah.
entire time. And
Yeah.
I remember that Michael Connolly was saying, yes, we have to bring, if there's 10 episodes, there's not usually one director. And let's talk
Yes.
about that too, that there's different directors. And I remember you said, I believe it's on the first season, you wrote 1 and 2 and 10, or you wrote different episodes. You didn't write them all. So let's share with people, because I think that's very interesting to most people as well.
Yes. So with the first season, there were 7 episodes, and my husband and I wrote episode 1, episode 2, and episode 7. And then within our writers' room, they wrote 3, 4, 5, and 6. But we broke the whole show together in this room.
Okay.
And then, everyone contributes, and things change back. So we were, when we're on set, you make different changes. We had this wonderful co-executive producer who worked with us, who was another writer, Jamie Rosengard, who we love so much that I introduced her to Jonathan Tropper, and now she works on Your Friends and Neighbors
Oh,
with
I love.
Jonathan Tropper. She's amazing. So like you all kind of work together, but when you're running the show, you're the one sort of that is the backstop and making sure that tonally everything is in line. But we were really lucky to have a great group of writers who were all involved.
Right. But some of the things may be shot in like different order. It's not
Oh,
always,
100%. It's
100%.
called
It's like,
it's called block shooting. And
okay.
so like sometimes you shoot something that happens in episode 7 or the final episode very early on.
Mhm.
And I remember we were shooting the plane scene with Hannah and Bailey quite early on. And that scene when they hold hands
Yeah.
and so yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah. It's interesting, the show about John JFK Jr., Love Story. They've
Yeah.
been doing a lot of outtakes on Instagram. They're really interesting for people because you saw how they were shooting. It wasn't really raining. They just had a truck like with rain over him on the bicycle.
Yeah.
So many interesting techniques that happen on the back end that the reader, like the viewer doesn't really see or know how it goes into. And I'm always fascinated by those.
It's really it's interesting how some of that happens. You know, a funny thing was this was my first time spending a lot of time on set. When my husband was working on Spotlight, I did move with him to Toronto, and so I was on set a bunch then. But really being on the set of my own show. And the very first day that I was on set, I don't know if I've told you this, Carol, but the very first day I got to set, I drove past who I thought was the security for the set, and I drove straight into a scene. The the people I drove past were real life police, were not real life police officers, were extras playing police officers. And I drove into a shot in which Jennifer Garner was walking through a parking lot. And in her infinite kindness, she's like, Laura, you're going to go park over there. It went right back to the scene. She's the biggest pro of all time. But yeah, you learn a lot pretty quickly.
Well, you know what else too that we were talking about when you wrote the first book, you didn't know Jennifer Garner. It was actually a different star that was there at the beginning to do this. So Jennifer Garner's there. Now you know Jennifer Garner, and I love this. Jennifer Garner likes to run. So
Yeah.
you would write scenes where Jennifer Garner could run. And
Yes,
Laura Dave does not run. Jennifer Garner runs. And I
exactly.
loved that because then you know something about her and what you could actually put into the story because it would fit something that would be a natural for her to do. So were there
Exactly.
moments like that, that any other
They're
moments like that?
she's such an amazing physical actress. One example of that is in the episode, the first episode of season two. She's a boxer in real life, and she boxes with her real life boxing coach on in this show. And the other thing is, you know, she really put on her executive producer hat, and the way that we came to picking Judy Greer to play Quinn, that was her suggestion.
Wow.
Uh, and Judy is so magical in the show, and they're so wonderful together. And you know, my favorite scene is between them in episode 8 of season 2, and they go head to head, and they're so good.
Yes.
And that's a direct result of Jennifer Garner knowing that would work.
You know, she does so much. She's doing the Capital One commercial, then she's doing this, then she's doing that. I said, this woman is like all over the place. Yet
Yes.
when she sits there, you feel like she's totally in that scene. That's the only thing she has to worry about. She's not gonna, but I love that thing about making dinner.
Yeah.
So you're okay, now you're working on an adaptation again of
Yes.
the words with the books with too many words in them. There's like noun, verb, like
Yes,
adjective,
the
blah, blah,
night we
blah.
lost him.
Right, we lost it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that one.
Which, if I could rename it, I would have called Windbreak, because in between these two, it should have been. But yes, we were writing that as a movie for Netflix, and that is a story that novel, The Night We Lost Him, is very close to my heart. And it has a love story in it that takes place over 50 years, and the mystery of
Yeah.
someone's death, as you know. And I'm loving writing that movie. It is a really lovely second life to give that book. I'm just having a really great time.
Okay, so the difference between the movie and doing a series, difference between doing that, you're gonna executive produce again, you're going to be on set again, but it's different doing a movie compared to doing a series. And I love our readers to get a little understanding so when they watch things, they have a better understanding of what it is.
I think of it more like television feels more like a marathon,
Mhm.
because there's so many episodes. I think like you know, it's like kind of like an 8 hour movie or a
Yeah,
10 hour
yeah,
movie. So
right.
a movie in comparison feels much easier because it's a 2 hour movie. So you're not doing pre-production and post-production and all the things at once while you're writing. This, you write it, you hand it to a wonderful director. It's not as involved for the writer necessarily, but we are producers on The Night We Lost Him, so we will be on set.
On set. You know, it's also interesting too that a lot of times the penultimate episode is the best episode. Like
I totally agree.
and it goes like downhill from there. And I felt yours really hung in on 7, whereas a lot of them, it's 6, and then 7 is like, oh, I could have made pancakes tonight. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like nothing really happens. And I'm always saying to people, forget which show it was. The one at 7, no, it was the one with the family that was all fighting each other.
Fleischman is in trouble.
No, no, no.
Succession.
Succession, right? I knew the penultimate
We could
episode.
go
I
on a
knew.
game show together. That was so fast.
That's really good. That's really good. But I knew that the penultimate was going to be better than the finale there. I just saw it like coming. And there's sometimes when you're watching, that's what you're seeing is it's all here right now, guys. What's
Yeah.
going to happen next week? Everybody's
Yes.
going to pack a suitcase and go home.
Yes,
And
I
I
totally
think
get that.
watching differently, and that's the reason I love when talking to somebody like you about this, because I feel like the readers are watching the show, and I want them not to just watch it for the show, but watch it for the craft of that, which is
Yes.
very different than the craft of writing a book. And what worked or didn't work for you? Did the character really work? Did it, you know?
It's different. And, I think that uh, y not only do they have different responsibilities, but often, I think most times people are more attached to a novel, as at least I am as a reader. I'm often more attached to a novel than to the adaptation. And if you understand that going in, you can have fun with the adaptation,
Hmm.
not in terms of writing it, but even in terms of watching it.
Right.
Sometimes it's better, but most of the, or equal. But what I feel very lucky about with the last thing he told me is we had a cast led by Jennifer Garner who read the book and cared about the book. And I feel like you could see that on the screen.
Yeah, and you can see, and then also they were so close. They came out so
Yes.
close to each other that
Yes.
it's got to like match up and go. So let me just, oh, the other thing, Tom, we're going to go to, I'm just telling you, Voice of God, Tom Donadio, our editorial director. We're going to go to questions in a second. But for humor, I forgot that one of your books was called Hello, Sunshine. And since
Yes.
that's the name of Reese's film company, I couldn't stop laughing. I looked at that today and I was like, well, that made me smile. You know?
Yes. Well, and I titled the book, we were in the about to come out, and in like the 3 months in between, you title and it goes into all the things. She came out and announced her company's Hello Sunshine. So it was like I adore Hello Sunshine. They have, they've been great producing partners. It was not the best moment for me to name a book Hello Sunshine. It was very confusing.
And I didn't put that together till today. I was looking at your 8 books and I was like, oh my gosh, that's like too funny.
Yeah.
So, Tom, I'm turning over to you. Do you have questions from the audience?
Yes, so far we have two questions and a comment. So if you do have a question, feel free to drop it into the Q&A. First question from Gail. Were you inspired by very public fraud, personal banking scandals, or do you have an awareness of banking procedures?
Mm.
Well, I love that question, Gail. I was very inspired by Enron. That had a huge influence on my decision to write the book. In 2003, I saw an interview with Linda Lay, the wife of the CEO, Kenneth Lay, in which she was on the Today Show and she said, "My husband's done nothing wrong." And that really stuck with me. And I started to imagine a woman who found herself in that position, leaving aside whether Linda Lay believed that, who found herself in the position where who the world was telling her husband was in direct opposition to who she believed he was. And it was when I figured out how to make that woman the hero of the story that I put pen to paper, which was about 8 years later. So that was a huge influence for me.
Sorry for the background noise there. Next question from Pam. Your books are so fast-paced and riveting. What techniques do you use to create these edge of your seat feelings and the fast pace?
Well, I do two things in addition to listening to the same song on repeat and making sure I'm really staying in the rhythm always of the story. Around draft 5 or draft 6, I when it's really a manuscript at that point. Um uh uh my husband jokes it's the sing-song manuscript because I'll walk around the house for a week or two reading it out loud and figuring out the pacing and figuring out, is there a lull here? How does this sound? I like to write a book that I hope does two things. One is a book that if you are being read to it out loud, hearing it out loud, like an audiobook, it feels like a story you're being told personally, which leads into the second thing. I imagine my books as a love letter to one person because I think when you're writing a letter to one person, there is by necessity a rhythm to how you're writing that letter. You're writing it with an intensity to keep them engaged. And so I do both of those things in order to really try to keep it that you want to keep turning the pages no matter what, that you do not want to put that book down.
I think it's interesting that what you talk about is reading it aloud because with audio these days, it's really important to hear you're saying the same word over and over, the same phrasing over and over. The pitch is different. I'm going to go excited, excited, excited. I need a lull.
Mhm.
And when you're being read to, it's a completely different thing than being on the page. And I've been listening to the same book for 3 weeks in the car because I haven't been in the car that much. But it's fun because I get in and I want to be with those people again. I want to be with the storyteller telling me the story.
It's such a different thing and such a gift. I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
We have an interesting question from Barbara. She says, would you ever consider writing a children's book? We know you have a 10-year-old son.
I would consider writing a children's book. I have written a children's book for my son. So he has his own personal book that is about the tree in our backyard. But that's something that I've thought about and something that I would like to do. It's something I think about.
That'd be really fun. Fun for the two of you to write together.
Yeah, that'd be
It's close. I mean, he's 10. A lot. I
yeah,
mean, I remember when he was born. Oh my gosh, 10 already.
I know. I know, about to be 10. I have one more month of 9, one more month.
I remember the first time you were going on a business trip and you were leaving him and you were really nervous. And I told you to buy him a different present for every day to open. And you go, I'm going to the store right now. I'm going right now to buy those presents.
You know what? I didn't realize that was you. I still do that every trip. He has to thank you for a lot of presents.
But it's something to open from mom every day. And you
Yes,
have an extra one in case the plane doesn't make it back on time. We have an extra
exactly.
present,
Exactly.
in case the
Brilliant.
plane gets stuck someplace.
Do you happen to have a story in mind for a potential children's book?
Nothing, nothing that I feel is evolved enough to talk about.
I think it could be
Right.
mommy on the baseball field.
It should
Mommy is on the baseball field today.
every day.
And you know
Every
I'm
what?
sure you could draw a lot of material from, your real life,
yes.
from you have so much going on and being a mom, so I'm sure there's a lot of material to draw from for sure.
Mommy's on the baseball field every day. People whose children are on baseball, it's like my younger son played baseball. He says, Mom, I don't play very well. This is the reason I get to play. I always
Hmm.
get picked. Dad coaches and you bring books to the mothers and talk in the stands. That's
Yeah.
the only reason I'm on. I'm not that good, Mom. I'm
I
really not
love
that good. But it was
that.
very funny. He says, because you're there for hours. And then whoever son is pitching, that woman is under the stand someplace because she can't even watch.
My
So
son pitches. So I am by when he pitches, he doesn't always pitch, but when he pitches, I'm like, don't talk to me, don't look at me. But I love being at the baseball field. I love baseball. That's where he I apologize for the noise until he just went to baseball practice.
there you go. There you go. Baseball practice every night of the week.
Yeah,
It's training for the big league.
exactly.
We have a comment from an anonymous attendee who says, in the first time I saw him, I really liked how you depicted Hannah and Bailey as basically mom and kid, how Hannah seems almost to be Kate's sister in terms of how she stands up to Nick and with Nick to Frank, and how you circled back to places and items that had been shared in the past. So that was just a comment
Oh,
from.
nice. That means so much to me. Thank you.
Going back and forth.
And we don't have any more questions.
There you go. Laura. I keep forgetting it's 3 hours earlier there too. I'm like, oh, he's going to baseball. It's like 9 o'clock. I'm
Yeah,
like,
no, yeah,
oh,
no.
it's six. It's six there. It's six.
Clock, 6 to
I was
8.
actually thinking the same thing too. I was like, oh wow, that's really late for baseball
Yeah.
practice.
He said he's going out before. I'm like, oh, wow, it's really late to be going out.
I still think 6 to 8 is late, but I'll take it.
Yeah. But
Right.
it's really it's when you're on the West Coast, are you always thinking about East Coast time in a lot of ways because your editor is here, your agent is here? Is it you're
I,
doing the
I
clock
do.
all day long?
I think about it a lot. And one of the reasons I think that in the morning, I'm very aware when it hits 3 o'clock in New York. That's when I usually take my first break to check email and everything. Because when it's 12 here, 3 where you guys are, because I want to be able to reach everyone before people have to go home or they go home at 5. So I'm very conscious of New York time.
Yeah.
I also get up very early, and Mary Sue, my editor, and Carol, my mutual friend, or Suzanne, my agent, like sometimes I'll write them at 5 in the morning before I start working, knowing they won't see it. Like, but I'm aware it's like 8 o'clock where they are.
And then they'll answer back, yes, no. And you're just like, which question was that? Which question was that?
Exactly.
Laura, it's always a pleasure. You say you liked, I couldn't be finishing your tour without getting to talk to you, besides just a couple of words that night at the Strand, where you were so good. That event was absolutely fabulous.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a joy to have you there. And yeah, it was a really lovely night.
It was a really lovely night. There were a lot of people that had worked with you on the show and everything that were in the room. So, and you're really lovely because you acknowledge so many people while you're sitting there. And that's hard. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot to being on when you're being
Yeah.
on the road.
Yeah. There's
My
there's
favorite, I think, though, and the readers will get a kick out of this. She says to me, I'll reach out to you like when I get off the tour. Email me. And then she wrote her email in the book. And then yesterday I realized I had a typo and I'm thinking I'm writing her and I'm not. So it was really one of those funny moments of we thought we had this under control and 3 months later, no, we did not. So
Yes. Oh my gosh. I know. I was like, I don't have that email from you. Yeah, I didn't have it, but
somebody's got a
uh,
name with one letter different, and that's where
yeah,
it is. That's where it
yeah,
is.
yeah.
Promise you'll come back.
I,
Promise you'll come back.
you are a gift in every way. I would be honored to.
Oh, you're so sweet. So we definitely want to have you back. Now we will let you go pretend you're going to go to place a baseball practice or eat dinner. And I'm
Yes.
going to tell people about some other stuff that's coming up soon. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much, Laura.
Have a wonderful time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. So we've got a couple of more announcements from us. First of all, tonight's event will be available on YouTube and on our podcast later this week, and we'll alert you when it's live, and you can share it with your friends or rewatch it yourself. Or if you came in late, we've got you covered. We've created an events page on TBR Network where you can sign up for all of our programs. So if you go to tbrnetwork.com/events, you can sign up for everything we're doing because we've got three really big programs coming up. Our next Bookaccino Live book preview event will be in the afternoon on Wednesday, May 13th at 2 o'clock. Sign up for that is now available. And for those of you who might be new to us, that's where we talk about something like 48 books that are coming out in the next 4 weeks and 2 months after that. So you know what's happening out there in the pipeline. So if you want to go do that, that's something you can sign up for. And once again, that's always available on video later on. You do that thing called going to work. Okay. Like you have to leave the house and can't cut out. Wally Lamb is going to be joining us on Tuesday, May 26th at 8 o'clock to discuss his novel, The River is Waiting, the novel that I was so emotionally attached to that 2 days after I finished, I don't think I could still talk about it, but it's fabulous. It's a Book Reporter Bets On selection, and sign up for that is available now. And that Bruce Holsinger will be joining us on Wednesday, June 24th at 8 o'clock to discuss his novel Culpability, which also was a Book Reporter Bets On selection. Sign up for that is available now as well. If you sign up for our events at the Book Report Network newsletter, you'll never miss an event. Probably one is going out on next week on Monday, which will be like the first Monday of the month. We try to do that. And a reminder, we have more than 250 Book Reporter Talks to Author interviews available on our YouTube channel, which is the Book Report Network or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we have past events with Laura there. So if you go back and look, I believe she was at a Bookaccino Live book group before, and I've interviewed her before. We thank you for joining us. You're the reason we get to do this, and we really appreciate your time. We know there's a lot of things to be doing on a Wednesday night, and we appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.